Can the Minnesota Vikings win that NFC North crown and beat the Detroit Lions? It's going to be a really tough task. But there are a lot of things that are different from that first game that are going to play heavily into this Sunday night's matchup, arguably the biggest regular season game of all time in the history of the National Football League. Welcome to the Real Forno Show on a beautiful Friday afternoon.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Real Forno Show, hosted by the one and only Tyler Forness. A to Z Sports sought him out to be their Minnesota Vikings reporter and NFL analyst. And he's a proud contributor over at SKOL North's Purple Daily. Tyler is also the captivating host of The Good, The Bad, and The Hungry on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network, and a founding member of Vikings First and SKOL.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Real Forno Show with our new sponsor, Underdog Fantasy, which we will tell you all about here in a little bit. I am your host, Tyler Forness. With me, as always, in the top left corner, best producer in the game, producer Dave. Dave, I know it's not 6 o'clock, but do you have a glass of bourbon poured?
No, I do not. And I just ran out of coffee.
Oh, you know what? That would have been a perfect for a nice little Irish coffee too. Well, we are we're being powered by Livewire here today, and welcome to the Real Forno Show. Thank you guys so much for being flexible with us during this holiday season. We only had the one show last week, or did we do two shows and we did it Thursday? I don't even remember because it's been so chaotic over here. And we had plans with the in-laws on New Year's. The in-laws have been staying here for 2 weeks. Love those guys. And it's been a joy. As you can tell, there's a little less clutter behind me because they are transferring over to my wife's aunts for the next couple of days before they head out of town. This is the biggest game in Minnesota Vikings history not played in the playoffs. I don't know if there's ever been a bigger one, Dave. There have been ones where we played for division titles in the final week. There have been ones where we played for playoff spots. I can recall multiple of those, Dave, just in my lifetime. 1997 against the Colts, 2003 against the Cardinals, 2012 against the Packers, 2015 against the Packers. I believe it was 2018 against the Bears. The Vikings needed to win it and they couldn't do it. But this one is different. This isn't just for a division title. This is two 14-win teams playing against each other for the number one seed and the division. There's never been a bigger regular season game than this in the history of the National Football League. And we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about it from every angle. And I think, Dave, the most important thing to talk about here is just an understanding of how good both of these teams are. They're different. The Lions are such a unique offense. I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like them. They love to pound the rock. They love to run power, counter. They will also run a bunch of zone, and they like to run a lot of short passing concepts to get yards after the catch. And Ben Johnson does just as good a job as anybody to get guys open in space to create after the catch. And that kind of offense is really good for a guy like Jared Goff, who does a great job throwing in timing, who does a great job throwing within the pocket, within structure, and distributing the football. That's his forte. And those elements make this such an interesting team. Plus, you can argue Ben Johnson might be overly creative, that he is too creative for his own good. But the counter argument to that is it hasn't bit him in the ass. Like, yeah, I've never seen a trick play fail that got cheered and widely praised than on Thanksgiving Day when they tried a pass with their right tackle and he ran out of bounds to take the sack because there was just nobody open. I've never seen that before in my life, Dave. I've never seen a failed trick play widely praised and cheered. That was just wild, but that's just kind of what Ben Johnson is. They have these really creative ways to maximize the football. And I want to start with my first point. And Dave, because I know you played against a lot of these types of offenses when you were in high school. I really think the biggest key to the Vikings being able to slow down this offense is you have to play them like they're Army and Navy running the triple option. You have to play.
Yes.
Hear me out, because I think conceptually it makes sense. You have to play gap control football. You have to play smart, calculated, and don't over pursue this, because the second you start over pursuing or get out of your assignment, they're going to gash you. And it's not going to be pretty, because they have a great offensive line. They have very good weapons on the outside, and they can take advantage of you on the short and intermediate levels of the field. And they're starting to get to the point where they can take advantage of you deep with Jameson Williams. But because of all their trickery and everything that they have plays and the ability to take advantage of those players being a little too aggressive. I think it was the Jameson Williams and Amon-Ra St. Brown hook and ladder from Monday night, where, Amon-Ra St. Brown catches in the middle, everybody crashes down. Guess what? Whoop. We're just going to pitch it, and it goes for 50 yards on a touchdown. But if you don't over pursue and the guy stays on the outside and does not crash down, guess what? That play is stopped, because you have a guy in that lane to be able to take advantage of it. And I think that's going to be a huge factor here, because one of the things that's huge with this Brian Flores defense, Dave, is they love to be aggressive. They love to attack the football. They love to get after you and take advantage of those elements. And quite frankly, it's hard to take advantage of those elements when you have to play gap control football. And I think the Vikings playing smart and within themselves, something they're more than capable of doing, is going to be huge in being able to stop this game. Do you agree with that kind of conceptual idea?
Yes. If they're going against, the way to defeat the option was always discipline. The edges kept contained, and the interior of the defensive line kept their gaps. Linebackers filling in the other gaps as necessary. If they can do that and they can stop the run and make Detroit focus on throwing the ball, I do believe we have the advantage. If they can do that. Now, they like to blitz. Obviously, Flores likes to blitz. He did blitz in the first game, but if I've seen conflicting deals about he was heavy, he was light, he was whatever. And Jared Goff is good against the blitz. But if you're disciplined in keeping in the gaps, he's going to be contained. And he will have a harder time improvising. Or, as you said before, the trick play coming on, because they're going to be watching and they're going to try to lull defenders into over pursuit. And that's when they're going to get bit on a play further down the road. Hopefully they can stay that disciplined and then let the back guys do their, whether it be man, zone, or zone, do their thing. It's going to be interesting. It's an exciting game. It is by far the most important game of the season for us and for Detroit, because we all know what happens if you don't win.
Yeah. And I think that's the big thing. So let's kind of talk about that, because I think the idea of playing disciplined football, it's not just about penalties. It's about staying in your lane. That's one of the big things with special teams. When you see a guy break a kick return, it's because somebody has lost lane discipline, gap control. So if you have, like, I don't know how they're labeled on special teams, but like the A gap is between the center and the guard, either on the left or right side. B gap is between the guard and the tackle. C gap is between the tight end and the tackle. So if nobody has the C gap and that's where that run is supposed to go, guess what? That thing's going for a long way. And same with if you have like the middle lane open on a kick return and it's a middle return, guess what? That guy's running. Just like Amir Smith-Marset had that with the Giants this past week. He basically just ran straight, barely had to move, and he got a touchdown. Like that kind of control is going to be so pivotal in this game, because you have to be able to stay disciplined against a team that loves to throw the kitchen sink at you. But I do think there is kind of more to this idea and more about And now I don't even remember what I was going to talk about.
You're not supposed to get old this early.
Well, I wanted to elaborate on your point about gap discipline, and then I just blatantly forgot what my next point was going to be in the process.
This team can do it. We have Blake Cashman back there, and we have Ivan Pace back. We have a stronger defensive line because we got Jalen Redmond. We have Tillery, who stepped up. I believe this team can do it. And it's going to come down to who has the most shots at the end zone for each offense. But trailing the Lions' shots at the end zone will be our defense. And I think they can succeed, and they could succeed a lot more. What am I looking for? Many more times than the Detroit defense can. But we'll find out. Detroit's getting Alzoni back, or whatever his name is.
Anzalone.
Pasta guy.
So yep. I will say this about Anzalone. One of the interesting things about his return, and I remembered my topic, so we can get to that in a minute. He is probably going to have a massive brace on his arm. So how effective he'll be at an overall level is still up in the air, assuming he does play. So I think that's going to be an interesting caveat, because linebackers who have these massive like clubs oftentimes struggle because they can't wrap up as well. They can't catch the football if there's an interception. So there could be some real limitations that could also play in, but just having him back as a general construct is really good because he's a great leader on that defense. He does have a lot of athleticism, and it does not impact coverage that much. Like, you can still, stick up the arm and all of a sudden, hey, bat down the football with the club. So those factors all end up mattering here. But I'm really intrigued by all that. I do think I want to address this in the comments because Fowler, I don't think I've seen you in here before. Welcome. What's it like to have a coach just stole the Sean McVay's playbook? I am going to disagree in the fact that this is just Sean McVay's playbook. I'll say this. O'Connell, before Sean McVay, was also an offensive coordinator. And one of the things with these guys is they all have a base to build off of. Anybody who's ever worked for Mike or Kyle Shanahan has the same base. They use a lot of the same concepts, but it's how you build off of those concepts. Very rarely do you create a new concept in football, like a new general passing concept, something like we've always talked about dagger. So I do agree that when you talk about Kevin O'Connell, his base playbook is going to come from your influences, and his biggest influence is going to be Kyle Shanahan and mainly Sean McVay. But over the last 3 years, he's inputted some things that are just different. How he gets to things are different. And it's not a one-to-one cosplay. Bobby Slowick is a bad cosplay of Kyle Shanahan. Ben Johnson is, I believe he's a Shanahan disciple as well. But the thing with Ben Johnson is he has done such a good job of implementing all of his own stuff and being creative to where he doesn't feel like a Kyle Shanahan disciple. He's kind of his own guy. And I think when I watch Kevin O'Connell call offenses, I see McVay influence, but you're really starting to see the Kevin O'Connell playbook come out. Everybody has a base. So there's plenty of McVay stuff in here. Nobody should ever tell you different, but you can see things that are different from his playbook to what McVay does, because Kevin O'Connell's still his own guy, and now he gets to do his own thing. And it's harder to do your own thing when you have a boss that calls plays. Now, O'Connell's game plan, O'Connell was a big factor in how the offense was ran, but he did not run the offense. It's like an assistant general manager. They do so much for you, but at the end of the day, they don't call the shots. They have a boss. The general manager calls the shots. And I do think that at this point, I think it's it would be a complete a lazy comp to just say he's just running the McVay playbook. It's McVay influence, but it's O'Connell's playbook. there are enough differences to where it's heavy McVay influence, but it's not a carbon copy. And I think that's where the difference lies. Bobby Slowick is just trying to run everything that Kyle Shanahan did, and he's just bad at it. Nathaniel Hackett was just trying to run Matt LaFleur's playbook, and he was just really bad at it. No creativity, no ingenuity. And that's where you can kind of separate who's a really good play caller and who's really talented versus who is just doing it because their boss did. And I think that's where we really see Kevin O'Connell separate himself from some of those other guys. Like, this is a Kevin O'Connell offense. This is not, a Sean McVay offense. I do think that like year one, it was a really heavy McVay offense. And I think you've started to see more and more of O'Connell's voice being implemented as he gets more comfortable, as he starts to have more ideas, as he starts to adjust things. Because remember, 2020, 2021, Kevin O'Connell did have plays in that playbook. There were things that came directly from him. I can't tell you exactly what was or wasn't, but an offensive coordinator is going to have plays. There's plays Wes Phillips has put into this playbook. Probably Grant Udinski and Josh McCown too. The playbook itself is a mismatch of a lot of different things.
Plus, it's the ability to use and pick and modify plays at particular points of the game that gives Kevin O'Connell the advantage. He and Ben Johnson, for that matter, they both do it. They sit there and they look at what's going on and what's being played. They're not scripted per se. Yeah, the first drive maybe, but they're generally reacting or being proactive to how the defense is playing them. And that's a sign of a good coach. Good play caller, I should say.
Absolutely. Because I do think some of the things that O'Connell does it's just really creative, and it's how we create space. He does a great job of shifting, not just motion at the snap. He does a really good job of getting guys like Addison and Jefferson moving, and then they turn up field and run vertical routes. Or what they love to do is show the vertical stem, and then at about 5 yards, just whip a speed out and be able to just get quick yards. I really, really like that. I like those kind of nuances. They do a great job of using those kind of shifts to be able to create space, like the Jalen Naylor first down, the Jordan Addison follow route, where he's like kind of stemming out like he's going to do a wheel, and then he just cuts back inside like a slant. They had a nice 3rd and 4 completion there. It's those little nuanced differences, I think, that are what separates O'Connell from a lot of other people, because he just takes such simple things. The illusion of complexity, like that's not just, hey, it's a buzzword. No, he really does live like that and believe it because of how he utilizes space, how he utilizes his athletes in the right possible way. And I'm just such a big fan of what he does. I do think he needs to not just completely abandon the run game at times, because he loves to do that. I will defend it in certain circumstances, like against the Seahawks. Right before that Seahawks drive, he went 3 and out. But I also think that it was important to know that he was about to that it was under the 2-minute warning. So they were trying to score and trying to, not run a lot of clock. So I think there are layers to it. I think he did a much better job against the Packers with the run game. And I think that's a good thing. We'll see how healthy Aaron Jones is, because it's evident now, Dave, that he has trust in Cam Akers, like real trust. And I think that's a great thing to have, that something that he just has not shown the ability to trust multiple running backs throughout his tenure. So the fact that he now has all this trust in Cam Akers, he obviously has trust in Aaron Jones. Hopefully that manifests itself in a huge way on Sunday. I do want to mention one more comment from Fowler, who I believe is new here, as I mentioned, because I just think it's hilarious. KOC is a dingleberry that fell off Sean's butt cheeks. I just think that's funny. I don't think it's true, but I just find it funny. All right, as we said earlier in the show, Dave, we do have ourselves our first big boy sponsor, and that is our friends at Underdog Fantasy. So Underdog Fantasy is a really nice partner for us because it helps us enjoy the games more. And one of the fun things about it is you can make your picks, you can set your lineup, and then you can make every game more fun. And you can give yourselves an opportunity to have a little bit of extra fun on a game you may not have normally cared about. You pick whether your favorite players will have a higher or lower stat total in this week's game, and you can win up to 1,000 times your money in a single night. I did a pick'em entry on the Penn State Boise State game, and I hit a four pick lineup and made myself a solid amount of money. I won 8 times my what I put into it, and it's great. This week, one of the picks that I really like is Mike Evans more than 97.5 receiving yards. He needs 5 receptions for 85 yards to break 1,000 yards, I believe, for the 10th or 11th straight season. Something that I don't think has ever been done to start a career, and he's really close. Plus, the Bucs need to win in order to win the NFC South and make the playoffs. That is going to be my favorite one for the day. If you visit underdogfantasy.com or in the App Store, register with my promo code Forno, Forno. It's going to be a free pick plus first-time deposit offer up to $1,000 in bonus cash. As you can see on the availability map, it is available in the majority of the United States. Some states you need to be 18, some 19, some 21. Make sure that you check the availability in your state. As I mentioned, must be at least 18 plus in all states and present in the state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Visit www.mpcgambling.org. In Arizona, 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. In New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY to 467-369. Underdog Fantasy is going to be a really fun sponsor throughout our course of partnership because there are fun ways to get involved, Dave, with every single game that you watch. And you know what? It can help you win a little bit too. And I think that is going to be a lot of fun.
And if you're good at it, it helps, it could be that side hustle.
Yeah.
Buy me another bottle of whiskey.
Yeah. Using that promo code does also help us out. That is why we have it. So if you have not signed up for Underdog, use the promo code Forno and you will help out the channel. And you'll get an opportunity to make some money yourself. Now, let's get back to talking about this. The topic that I mentioned that I forgot, and then that I all of a sudden remembered. Well, I wasn't going to forget it this time. Let's talk about the potential results, Dave, and how the results can factor in. So, if the Vikings win, it's incredibly simple. They win, they get the number 1 seed. They get a home field advantage throughout the playoffs. They will play the 4, 5, 6, or 7 seed in the divisional round, and then they will play whoever's left.
Mm-hmm.
If they lose, it's going to be a much, much harder path. But it's not an impossible one. Tom Brady was the 5 seed and took that team with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in 2020 to the Super Bowl and won it. The difference here is going to be they got to do it during COVID and it was not full stadiums. That's going to impact here. And Dave has a nice little graphics in 1978, 1 seed versus 5 seeds. 5 seeds are a little bit different now than they were.
Oh, yes. So if you look at the last 10 years, I think there's only Brady that's done it.
Yeah. Well, what I mean by different, Dave, is 5 seeds can oftentimes be like 11 and 12 win teams because they're in strong divisions. Whereas 5 seeds in like 1985, they're winning 9 or 10 games. So that's what I mean by it's a little different now than it used to be. But the same premise remains. It is going to be difficult to win on the road. The good part for the Minnesota Vikings, Dave, they are 7-1 away from US Bank Stadium this year. Their only loss? 4 days after losing to the Detroit Lions and the Los Angeles Rams. And this is going to lead into my next point, because I think this is the most important point about this Detroit Lions game. There is no bigger disparity than having Blake Cashman off of the field. So much of what the Rams and Lions love to do is attack the middle of the field. They love to attack it short. They love to attack it deep. And if you can attack the middle of the field, that's the bread and butter. It's incredibly hard to attack the Vikings in the middle of the field when Blake Cashman is healthy and playing. What was the big difference against the Lions and against the Rams? No Blake Cashman. And I think he is going to be the single most important factor in being able to stop the Detroit Lions. Why? The Lions do love to attack the middle of the field. They love to use crossers. They love to use dagger. They love to use in routes. Amon-Ra St. Brown being like getting open and just kind of slithering like a snake and just getting around coverage and just being able to find little holes in the zone. When you have a guy like Cashman who's got such a quick trigger and can make an impact in the passing game, be able to tackle well in space. One of the things I really appreciate about the Vikings tackling is they're not just getting tackles. They are grabbing, driving, and preventing them from getting forward. They're driving them down. They're preventing them from gaining more yards. And I think that's been really impactful in being able to shut down teams on third down, on fourth down, and be able to prevent them from getting that much important first down. Cashman's ability in coverage. I've got a couple plays that I've clipped on my social media, my Twitter, @TheRealForno. If you do not follow me already, I recommend that you do. And I would be very grateful. Thank you. One of the big things here, though, Dave, is when you have teams that love to throw over the middle of the field, they do a phenomenal job of having Cashman just kind of sit in zone and watching the quarterback's eyes. Against the 49ers, who's a phenomenal example of this. Cashman just sitting in his zone and waiting. And then all of a sudden he sees Brock Purdy like focused in. I think it was on Deebo Samuel. Cashman jumps it, almost intercepts it, but bats it up. Metellus intercepts it. It's a big turning point in the game. That's what he does. He does such a great job of seeing things and attacking. And one of the other parts that just does not get talked about enough is how great of a blitzer Cashman is. Cashman does a great job in all forms of blitzing. They use him as a looper. So in stunts, I'm sure you guys have heard me talk about it before, but I'll say it again. You'll have one or two guys trying to take up the blocks. They're the crashers. The looper is going to go around the crasher or crashers to be able to attack the quarterback, because in theory, what that's going to do is give him a free path to the quarterback. Take some time. That's why you usually use guys that are quicker as the looper. And I think Cashman is such a good guy to do that with, because he does such an awesome job of being able to maneuver around blocks and be able to attack the quarterback, attack the running back in the running game. And I do think he is going to be the number one biggest impact for the Minnesota Vikings to win this game, because having him and not Ivan Pace. I like Ivan Pace. I think he's a good football player, but it was evident against the Rams. They picked on him and they exploited his weaknesses in pass coverage. They exploited his lack of ability to truly move laterally, because he's just not that guy. And you know what? That's okay. There's a role for him on this team, and it's a good role. He needs to be the first and second down linebacker and a third down blitzer, where he's just going to penetrate and cause chaos in the run game, cause chaos as a blitzer, cause chaos just doing all of those things running downhill. You ask him to drop into coverage, there will be struggles. And I think having Cashman's going to be that next level thing.
I agree. It's going to be huge. And everybody on the defense, for the most part, being healthy is another big advantage. But I agree, Cashman being back should be one of the difference makers. And hopefully he'll get his first interception, because he's dropped. That one in the Rams, he knocked up, and then he's dropped one that went right through his hands.
Yeah, those things are going to be so interesting to kind of watch. We do have a couple questions in the chat that I want to get to before we kind of really talk about like predictions and that kind of thing. I think cause and effect has a good one for Forno and Dave. Forno got me. I thought that was kind of funny. I probably just miss it. But do you see any big playoff roster moves to be made? And who would you suggest if you were running the team? So this one is interesting because there have been a couple guys who've been let go. I was really disappointed. Jamin Davis got sniped on waivers by the Jets. I was hoping the Vikings would be able to sneak him to the practice squad because I did really like what Jamin Davis brought to the table. I didn't think Jamin Davis was great. I thought he was solid. And he was solid for what they were asking him to do. And I thought, you know what? Maybe someone like Brian Flores can really elevate him to the next level. Maybe it's a guy like Flores who can just see what the talent is and maximize it in that system. But I don't think we're going to be able to get that chance. The only good part is I think he's going to be a free agent after the year, and the Vikings could theoretically bring him back for depth. There have been players who have been released. Deontay Johnson got released, but he got claimed by the Texans. Calais Campbell's been rumored to be released. So if he gets released, the Vikings could go for him. And quite frankly, I'd be all for it. I think a guy like Calais Campbell, I wanted them to sign Calais Campbell back in May because what I wanted to see was him work with guys like Jonathan Grenard and Dallas Turner. Because Calais Campbell is like 6'8", 300 pounds. Just a mammoth man. But he's got like 36-inch arms. And having long arm length is a gift. And it is something that you need to maximize. But what it also does is you have to know how to use them. Grenard has 35.5-inch arms. Dallas Turner has 34.5-inch arms. Bring in a guy who's probably going to go in the Pro Football Hall of Fame and be like, hey, I just want you to play your game. But while you're here, I want you to work with Grenard and Turner and teach them how to use this arm length, how to maximize it. Because Grenard is like, he's 6'4", 270. Like, he's not a small guy, but he's not the kind of mammoth, just large human that Calais Campbell is. But you can use him in similar ways because of that arm length. And I think that element would be so cool to be able to maximize. Outside of that, I don't know if there's anybody you could really bring in that's going to make enough of a difference on this short of a timeline, because this is a very short timeline that we have. And they have to learn a complicated defense or a complicated offense. Odell Beckham Jr. is always going to be somebody that people throw out there because he does know what Kevin O'Connell likes to do. He does have that base knowledge of the system. And if you call a play and you tell, Darnold could call the play and then just be like, if Beckham has questions, be like 15-yard dig. Okay, done. And then he can do some of those things. But is he washed because of his knee injuries? Probably. And that really sucks because Odell looked like he was on track to be like a Hall of Fame level receiver. But I don't think that they're going to bring him in. I think they're going to be just happy with what they have. I do think wide receiver 3 is a sneaky need in the offseason to make sure that you have that upgrade. If you believe it's Naylor, that's great, but I would bring in some competition. I think it's just Calais Campbell. If the Dolphins don't make the playoffs and do release him, because you have to be a free agent by, I think it's the 8th of January, which is Tuesday. So we'll see. What do you think, Dave? Is there anybody that piques your interest?
Well, I'm just curious if they bring Daniel Jones up to the 53 this week.
Doogie talked about that. He believes that it's going to happen. Kevin O'Connell opined on it. I believe it's going to happen. It just makes too much sense. And here's the thing. When you talk about that element, when you talk about like what Daniel Jones would bring, like you can have Brett Rippon on the practice squad and he's going to do the same shit. Mm-hmm. Daniel Jones is probably going to be back next year. Let's just be real. But if he doesn't and he wants to get like $10 million from somebody, that's a part of the comp pick formula. But he has to be on the active roster for week 18. So
unless there's some secret agreement that when he came over that he was going to sign next year.
I think the idea of him coming here was a trial run to see that he really liked it and wanted to use this to rehab his career. I think that's what it was. There's a couple more questions in the chat I think we should get to. Scottish Bear, we'll get to yours here in a second, but somebody else had a question. Oh, it was Big Nuts 35 had a comment about Kirby Joseph, and I want to address this because I think it's important. How fitting is it that Kirby Joseph got a Pro Bowl snub, cost him millions for next year because of the CBA rookie contract? Here's the thing. People think Kirby Joseph is dirty, and I just don't. And I know players will think that because he's going low, but the NFL is literally telling players to hit low and not high because of concussions. And this is an unintended consequence. Kirby Joseph hit, it wasn't an illegal or dirty hit on TJ Hawkinson. It just happened to blow out his knee. That sucks. That's awful. I hate it for him. But that doesn't make it dirty. That it's football. Football, you're going to get hurt. There are going to be things that happen. And it happened to Tyler Higbee. Well, guess what? They want you to tackle these guys lower, and tight ends, you go for the legs. That's always how it's been.
Yeah, and then I hated it. Absolutely hated it.
I hate it too, but what do you want these guys to do? This isn't flag football.
Well, they can't go for the chest or up high because the tight end outweighs them. And generally will dominate that. But it is what it is.
And Daniel Foss says in the comments perfectly, your knees are your brains. And the NFL would rather see knee injuries than brain injuries. And whether you believe that's right or wrong, that's just kind of how it is. I don't think Kirby Joseph's a dirty player. I really don't. And I know I'm in the minority as far as Vikings fans. And you know what? That's okay. Because you know what? If Cam Bynum
hit him right above the knee, it's just that his foot was in the turf.
If Cam Bynum made both of those hits, I think the same thing. It's not dirty. But I did find an interesting comparison, Dave, because Kirby Joseph currently leads the NFL with 9 interceptions.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember the Minnesota Vikings safety that led the NFL, 9 interceptions that missed the Pro Bowl?
Hitman?
Brian Russell in 2003.
Oh, okay.
One of the reasons why he missed the Pro Bowl is because his teammate Corey Chavis made the Pro Bowl with 8 interceptions. And they didn't want to take 2 safeties from the Vikings. Look, are there other aspects that maybe Joseph is dirty that we're just not privy to? Because I did find it interesting after the Higbee hit, Matthew Stafford yelled at him. And if you search Kirby Joseph, Matthew Stafford on Twitter, you'll be able to find Stafford yelling at him, calling him a dirty player. But I do think that him missing the Pro Bowl is because coaches and players did not vote for him because he had the number 1 safety fan vote. I do think it's a much, much more layered conversation. And I think players find it dirty, but players want that hit out of the game. But what the hell do you want them to do?
Tackle at the waist. Tackle his chest.
It's just a hard discussion. It really is. But I really don't find Kirby Joseph dirty, and I'm okay being in the minority. I've always been okay being in the minority, baby. I had Chop Robinson as my 4th overall player. I'm going to victory lap the shit out of that the next few years. It's projected to be. Why? Chop Robinson's been playing one of the best edges in football over the last 2 months. And his efficiency stats are right up there with Jared Verse. He just started playing later than Verse did. So last question, then I want to go into predictions from you and I, Dave. Or do you want to save your prediction for 2 old bloggers?
No, I'll give it today.
Scottish Bear, good friend of ours who is obviously a Bears fan, says there's a lot of smoke in Chicago about Flores becoming the Bears head coach and McCown going to be the OC. I do find it interesting, as you mentioned, Scottish Bear, that Poles and Flores they'd play together. I think they're also fraternity brothers. I can't confirm that, but I did hear somebody say that, and that there's a decent chance that's a possibility because they play college ball together. Personally, I don't think the Bears are going to hire Flores. The Bears don't seem like the type of organization to hire somebody who is suing the league. Now, does Flores deserve an opportunity? Yeah. But there's going to be more than that. There's politics involved. And, let's be honest, the Bears aren't exactly a forward-thinking organization in that sense. So I'm really intrigued to see what they do, but I don't think it'll be Flores. I don't, and that's not anything due to Flores. He's suing the league for something that honestly he's right about.
He is. So it's going to be interesting to see if he goes this season or not. If he gets any offers. And where. And whether he takes them.
Yeah.
He may want to stay another year. Which we hope.
I hope a lot of this coaching staff stays the rest of the year because I do think it's going to be a really, really good.
I saw a question earlier about who replaces Ben Johnson when Ben Johnson is gone. Will there be a regression?
Yes. There's going to be some form of regression, but how long that lasts is up to how good the new OC is. There's almost always going to be some form of regression. There just is. And
I expect regression for both teams. Winning 14 and 15 games in a season back to back. I don't know if it's ever been done before.
The Chiefs, I think.
Maybe, but
I'd have to double check. But if any team has done it, it's the Chiefs. Maybe the Patriots. That's a really good one to look up. We should do that later. But yeah, it's very hard. Cause and effect with one more question, then we're going to get to our predictions, and then we got to get out of here for the afternoon. Dave's got 2 old bloggers to prepare for. I've got a bunch of content to write that you should all go read at A2ZSports.com. He seems to be on an island with this, but he does not want to sign Darnold to a huge deal because love the roster moves that we made. This philosophy worked in New England with Brady. Why not here? Is Sam Darnold married to Giselle Bundchen?
He might wish, but no.
No, I think that's a big caveat here.
Are you saying that's why Tom Brady took less money? Because he had a sugar mama?
Yes. Well, not a sugar mama, but she made like 3 times as much as him. Her net worth is worth way more than his. So if she's bringing that much money and he wants to win, well, for lack of a better term, they can afford to take a $10 million pay cut more than, I don't know, say Patrick Mahomes, who does not have like a spouse who is uber wealthy. I mean, she does well, and she's created a nice little niche for herself in like the fitness industry, but she's not Giselle. So I do think that plays a huge factor in why I don't think anybody can make the Brady comparison. I will never fault a guy for taking as much money as he can get. It is incredibly hard to make that kind of money. And it's a potentially very short window. Make it while you can. Now, would it help the team? Yeah. Like, from a team building perspective, it'd rule if you can give a top quarterback like $20 million. It'd be great. But that's just not reality. So I'm really intrigued to kind of see how that ends up playing out with Darnold.
Well, even the cap would be just under 15% of the.
Mm-hmm. I did the math on this. If the Vikings franchise tagged Sam Darnold, the amount of cap space they would be paying Darnold and McCarthy is 0.5% higher than what I had for Drew Brees and Phillip Rivers, which is their best statistical comp. 0.5% more. So it like from a cap building perspective, because that's how you have to do it, like when you adjust across eras, because the cap space is so significantly different. The percentage of cap is almost the same. So I do think it's worth talking about. I'll leave it at this because we're gonna have so many more Darnold McCarthy conversations.
Oh yes.
Whenever you have these conversations, remember 2 things. Okay, 1. Don't put your feet in the sand and keep an open mind, okay? Just because the Vikings had a plan going into the year does not mean they can't shift off course. Why? There's new information. That is how people like Kwesi Adofo-Mensah work. When there's new information, you have to absorb it, and you have to be able to look at it and potentially willing to change what you're doing because of new information. That is how the stock market works. When new information comes, you cannot just stand your ground all the time. You have to be willing to adapt and adjust. That could be Darnold. And 2, I'm going to be honest, I don't know where I land on this. I haven't decided if I think it's a better idea to keep Darnold or keep McCarthy. Whatever road you want to pick. I am agnostic right now, and I'm going to make that decision this upcoming offseason. But I will say this. The whole idea about getting J.J. McCarthy was to find a franchise quarterback. Sam Darnold right now is playing how you want J.J. McCarthy to play in the future. So do you give that up? Just keep that question in mind, because that's going to be a huge part of that discussion. Sam Darnold is the ideal version of J.J. McCarthy, essentially. So do they want to give that up? I don't know. I don't have the answer. I'm not going to tell you I have the answer. But that's the $1 million question. Because it's going to be mainly about money. Because if it wasn't about money, I don't think that they would get rid of Darnold at all. I think Darnold would just be the dude. But money plays a huge, huge factor in it. There are a lot of layers to it. And don't put your head in the sand and only stick with one way. Just keep an open mind and let all the information come to you. And then when it's all done, then we can make a really informed decision. Because you may change your mind after a playoff run that wins a Super Bowl. You may change your mind after Sam Darnold throws 4 interceptions in the wild card. Like, there's just too many different things that can happen between now and when that decision needs to be made, which the franchise tag window opens February 18th at 3 p.m. Central, closes March 4th at 3 p.m. Central. March 10th at noon Eastern time, 11 Central, is when the legal tampering period begins. And I can almost guarantee you at some point on that day, Dave and I will be having a show or two. Because we did last year. I think we had like 3 last year. It was just bonkers, balls to the wall. But those things all matter. There's so many pieces of data. Don't just dig in and be like, this is how it has to be. There's something that could change your mind, and it's okay to change your mind because new data should influence decisions. That's what it's there for. So we'll see how it plays out. And we're going to have plenty to talk about with this conversation moving forward. National media is starting to say there's no way you can let this guy go. Well, the thing with national media is they do miss some nuance and context, but they also understand football on a broad scale and kind of how general managers in general think. Kwesi's different. So we'll just see. There's so many things, and Scottish Bear mentions that Adam Schefter said Darnold will ask for a huge amount. Remember this. It is Adam Schefter's job to find stories to talk about, to find talking points, to continue conversations. The thing is, he's saying like, oh, teams will call about McCarthy. Yeah, because he called like a couple GMs, like, yeah, we call about him. Absolutely. But that doesn't mean he's going to be traded. It's finding something to talk about when your job is to find things to talk about. And that's not to say Schefter's corrupt or unethical. He's doing his job. He's calling contacts and reporting what they tell him. Simple as that. There's nothing wrong with that. Just remember, support local media like you're doing now. And thank you guys so much for watching. Now, to finish off the show, Dave, predictions. I gave my prediction on A2ZSports.com yesterday. We did a roundtable with all the NFC North beat writers. Oh, just knocking over my keyboard. Oh, I hope you can still hear me.
Yes, we can.
Perfect, because I accidentally locked my computer because this new keyboard that I got has a lock the computer button. So that I predict the Vikings are going to win 31-26. I do think Blake Cashman is going to be the number one important factor in this game. He is going to be the reason why the Vikings win because of how he's able to handle the middle of the field, how he's able to attack as a blitzer, how he's able to work in the run game and fit. He just does everything at a really high level. And that not having him was such a big loss for this team. It was like crippling. And the fact that the Lions don't have David Montgomery, who was just a killer in the first matchup and has been a killer throughout his Lions career, that's going to play huge. Freddie, my score is 0.5 points over the over at 57. I think Cashman's going to be the number one factor in this game. Yes, Darnold still needs to play well. Yes, Jared Goff needs to play well, all those things. But having Cashman and the Lions being so decimated on the front on defense with how the Vikings like to attack, plus no Carlton Davis on the back end, I think that's going to be huge, and the Vikings end up getting the win. What do you think?
I believe the Vikings are going to win. I'd like to go with my 10 points that I've gone with most of the season and been pretty good at. Reason being, the Lions are coming off a very, very physical game out on the left coast.
Yes.
They may suffer from what everybody else is calling the blue flu when you play the Lions and then the next week the team goes out and loses, i.e. us. We did it on a short week with injured players, et cetera, et cetera. So it's going to be back. No, Scottish Barrett, Montgomery's not back. It's going to be interesting to see how they react. And then, of course, there's the Dan Campbell screwing up something. He's gotten better at it, but will that play into this? I don't know. But being a fan, and I am a fan, I'm going, we win by 10 points. I bet we score 34.
No, that's bold. But you know what? It's also not impossible. The Bills put up 48, and they took their foot off the gas.
Yep.
Look, this seems to be an all-out.
One of the Lions fans that's on here says Vikings maintain field goal lead. That's interesting, but ultimately lose, and it could come down to field goals too. Who kicks that last one? But they said no way the Lions score under 21. Well, twice this season they were under 21, so should be interesting. All the rest they were over. They're an offensive juggernaut without a doubt, but it's going to be interesting. We got the better defense.
I can't wait.
It's going to be fun. Oh, it's going to be a blast. Absolutely a blast. Sunday night, prime time. Oh, heck yes.
And we will be here right after the game to talk about it.
Hey, the final 2 minutes. Live at the final 2 minutes. At the 2-minute warning. Yes, I will be live. And you can join me. Watch the final 2 minutes together, and then we'll react. Yeah, buddy.
Yeah, buddy. We're going to have some bourbon flowing.
Chris,
it's very nice of you. Chris is trying to hit a parlay so he can take me to Detroit with him. I got to work, buddy. I'm sorry. But you know what? We'll see if we can figure out maybe a playoff game. Maybe I can sneak out and talk to my boss, be like, hey, my buddy was stealing me. He got like 5th row tickets to the playoff game or something. I don't know. But look, enjoy it. We're going to have a lot of discussion about the offseason with like McCarthy and Darnold. Look, just find a way to find joy in the season. This is what we're seeing is incredible. We may never see anything like this again. Enjoy it. Thank you for enjoying us and being with us here. We're going to be here all year and finding ways to help your Vikings fandom, whether it be talking in a positive or a negative way, and just being honest with you about everything that we see. Enjoy.
And make sure you catch me and Darren tomorrow for 2 old bloggers. We're going to be talking Darnold. That's one of them. And we're going to be talking the Pro Bowl as part of Vikings land stuff. And, of course, you're going to get game preview like no other.
Yeah. All right. Thank you guys for joining. I'm Tyler. He's Dave. We'll see you Sunday night after the game. SKOL Vikings.
SKOL Vikings. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell to get notifications. It helps us grow this community that we all love our Minnesota Vikings. And on behalf of Tyler Forness and myself, Dave Stefano, thank you so dearly for watching The Real Forno Show. SKOL, everyone!